Have you ever looked up at the night sky and wondered about the possibility of life on other planets? It's a fascinating topic, isn't it? Today, we're going to dive into a really cool aspect of this. What plants might be like on alien worlds? Now you might be thinking, plants on other planets? Yep, you heard that right. Scientists have been exploring this idea for a while now. They're particularly interested in exoplanets, which are planets that orbit stars outside our solar system. And guess what? Some of these exoplanets could potentially support plant life. But here's the catch. These plants might not look like anything we have here on Earth. Why? Because they might have to perform photosynthesis under very different conditions. For instance, some exoplanets orbit red dwarf stars, which emit fainter, redder light than our Sun. So, plants on these planets would need to adapt to this different light environment. But before we get into it, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And if you want to get notified every time I upload a new video, click the bell icon as well. It really helps me out, and I appreciate it a lot. Alright, let's get started. Alright, let's start with the basics. What exactly are exoplanets? Well, in the simplest terms, exoplanets are planets that orbit stars outside our solar system. You know how Earth orbits the Sun? Similarly, exoplanets orbit their own stars. But these stars are not our Sun, they're in different parts of the universe. Now you might be wondering, how many exoplanets are there? Great question. As of now, scientists have discovered over 4,000 exoplanets. And guess what? They believe there could be billions more waiting to be discovered. But here's the really exciting part. Some of these exoplanets could potentially support life. Yes, you heard that right, life on other planets. Scientists are particularly interested in a type of exoplanet called habitable zone planets. These are planets that orbit their star at just the right distance to have liquid water. And as we know, where there's water, there's a possibility of life. However, finding life on other planets is not as simple as finding water. There are many other factors to consider. For instance, the planet's atmosphere, its climate, its geological activity, all these play a crucial role in supporting life. Now let's talk about red dwarf stars. These are a specific type of star that are smaller and cooler than our Sun. Because of this, they emit light that is fainter and redder, hence the name red dwarf stars. You might be thinking, okay, but what does this have to do with exoplanets? Well, a lot actually. You see, many of the exoplanets we've discovered orbit red dwarf stars. In fact, red dwarfs are the most common type of star in our galaxy. So the chances of finding an exoplanet around a red dwarf are pretty high. But here's where things get interesting. Because red dwarfs are cooler than our Sun, their habitable zones, the regions where conditions might be right for life, are closer to the star. This means that any planets in this zone would be exposed to different conditions than we're used to here on Earth. For one, these planets would receive less light than Earth does from the Sun. But not just that, the light they do receive would be redder. This has some pretty cool implications for plant life on these planets, which we'll get into in the next section. So while red dwarf stars might seem a bit alien to us, pun intended, they could potentially be home to a whole host of exoplanets with conditions suitable for life. And who knows, maybe even plants. Before we dive into how photosynthesis might work on exoplanets, let's first understand what photosynthesis is. Simply put, photosynthesis is the process by which plants make their own food. It's kind of like cooking, but instead of using ingredients from the fridge, plants use sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide. Pretty cool, right? Here's how it works. Plants have a pigment called chlorophyll that absorbs sunlight. This sunlight is then used to convert water and carbon dioxide into glucose, a type of sugar, and oxygen. The glucose is used as food for the plant, and the oxygen is released into the air. So, not only do plants feed themselves through photosynthesis, but they also produce the oxygen that we breathe. Talk about a win-win. Now, photosynthesis on Earth relies on the specific conditions here, the amount of sunlight we receive, the composition of our atmosphere, etc. But what happens when these conditions change? What if there's less sunlight or the sunlight is of a different color? This is where things get really interesting. Now that we've got a handle on what photosynthesis is, let's explore how it might work on exoplanets. Remember how we talked about red dwarf stars and their fainter, redder light? Well, this is where that comes into play. You see, the color of light that a plant receives can affect how it performs photosynthesis. On Earth, plants are used to the bright white-yellow light from our sun, but on an exoplanet orbiting a red dwarf star, the light would be much redder. So how would plants cope with this? Well, scientists believe that plants on these exoplanets would have to adapt their photosynthesis process to make the most of this redder light. This could mean having different pigments to absorb the light more efficiently, or it could mean having a different cellular structure to capture and use the light better. But here's the thing, we don't know for sure. This is all speculative at this point. Scientists are still trying to figure out how this might work in practice. They're conducting experiments and running simulations to try and get a better understanding of this. Let's dive into a really cool concept called the red edge. This is something that scientists use to detect vegetation on other planets. But what exactly is it? Well, you know how we said that plants use chlorophyll to absorb sunlight for photosynthesis? Here's the thing, chlorophyll doesn't absorb all colors of light equally. It's really good at absorbing blue and red light, but not so good at absorbing green light. That's why plants look green to us. They're reflecting the green light back. But there's another color of light that chlorophyll doesn't absorb well: infrared light. This is light that has a longer wavelength than visible light, so we can't see it with our naked eye, but we can detect it with special instruments. Now, here's where the red edge comes in. If you graph the amount of light that chlorophyll absorbs at different wavelengths, you'll see a sharp increase at the boundary between red and infrared light. This is known as the red edge. Why is this important? Well, if we can detect a red edge in the light reflected from a planet, it could be a sign of vegetation. This is one of the ways that scientists are hoping to find evidence of plant life on exoplanets. All right, we've covered a lot of ground so far. We've talked about exoplanets, red dwarf stars, photosynthesis, and the concept of the red edge. Now let's bring it all together and explore what extraterrestrial photosynthesis might look like. As we've discussed, plants on exoplanets would likely have to adapt to very different conditions than those on Earth. They might have to deal with less light or light of a different color. This could lead to some pretty interesting adaptations. For instance, plants might develop new pigments to absorb the redder light from a red dwarf star. Or they might change their cellular structure to capture and use light more efficiently. They might even evolve completely new processes that we can't even imagine yet. But studying extraterrestrial photosynthesis is not without its challenges. For one, we can't just hop on a spaceship and go study these plants in person, at least not yet. So scientists have to rely on indirect methods, like looking for the red edge in the light reflected from a planet. And even if we do find evidence of plant life on an exoplanet, it would be very difficult to study it in detail. We'd have to rely on remote sensing techniques, which can only tell us so much. Despite these challenges, the study of extraterrestrial photosynthesis is an exciting field with a lot of potential. Who knows what amazing discoveries await us? But remember, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to discover and understand. Scientists are working hard to unravel the mysteries of the universe, and every day brings new findings and insights. So keep your curiosity alive. Keep asking questions and seeking answers. Because who knows? Maybe one day, you'll be the one making a groundbreaking discovery about life on other planets. If you like what I do in here, Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, if you have some topic that you'd like me to cover, write it down in the comments section. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.